Hey everybody, welcome to Inside Quest. We are the completely legal performance-enhancing drug for your mind, and our goal is to bring on amazing people who can help you perform better under pressure. And if you're looking to take your brain game to the next level, there is no better guest than the man joining us today. He's a best-selling author and performance coach who has trained some of the world's top athletes and business leaders. One of the highest-rated lecturers while an instructor at the #1 rated Kellogg School of Management, this dude is living proof that one can master the art of performing when the stakes are truly high. He is the co-founder of the Institute for Health and Human Potential, and he has dedicated himself to helping people fully realize their potential through the artful application of neuroscience, the science of performance, and the revelations that come from conducting large-scale studies, which I think is incredibly cool that they do all of that stuff themselves. His passion and powerful use of data-driven insights on the neurochemical realities of performance have made him one of the most sought-after speakers on the planet, and a top advisor to numerous Fortune 100 companies, including Johnson & Johnson, Goldman Sachs, and HSBC. In fact, during the recent economic crisis, when the pressure was truly at its highest, multiple global financial institutions reached out to him for guidance on how to make real and lasting change in their organization. And based on the plethora of absurdly glowing testimonials on his website, I'm going to guess that he delivered in spades. He was trained at Queen's University, Harvard Medical School's Mind-Body Medical Institute, and the Stress Clinic at the University of Massachusetts Medical Center. He has synthesized a rich background of diverse ideology that has allowed him to have success as an advisor from the boardroom all the way to the basketball court. Please help me in welcoming the co-author of the New York Times best-selling book, Performing Under Pressure, Doing Your Best When It Matters Most, the man the U.S. Navy said delivered the best program they had ever heard, Dr. J.P. Pawliw Fry.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
My pleasure to have you.
That sounds pretty good. Hope I can live up to that.
I think you will surpass it, judging by all the things that I've read that you've done, watching your videos, everything's been a lot of fun. The thing that going through your work really struck me is people list being afraid of public speaking as more terrifying than dying, which I find incredibly interesting. Why is that?
Yeah, so, I mean, part of it is, the book is about the science, as you said, the science of understanding what does pressure do to our brain, to our behavior. And one of the things that you need to understand, what people need to understand, is that there are 3 characteristics of pressure. So one is when the moment is important, so the outcome of the moment is important, when it's uncertain, and number 3, when we're responsible for or being judged on the outcome. And that third piece is what you're talking about, when we feel judged.
Yeah.
Right? So public speaking, you're in essence being judged on what you're saying, how you're getting your point across, the impact you're having. So for a lot of people, that third piece, we call it social appraisal, is the one that turns on the cascade of chemicals that makes us think this is a threat, this is a crisis, I've got to do something. And it truly is one of those, and I work with senior leaders and even CEOs in front of their board, feel it. People in front of TV feel it. And it's because, we want to be loved and respected, and we're in a position where we might not be.
Do you think any of that has to do with the self-narrative, and that failing like that when you know people are judging you then sort of informs what you think about yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a big piece. I think, as a parent, the best thing we can ever do is give our kids that belief that we trust that they have everything they need to be successful. They don't have to be anything different. And if they have that center being strong, then that self-narrative it comes from a place of, I'm independent of what other people think of me. But that's a hard one, right? For all of us, you, me, anyone. That's not easy.
Do you think people really can divorce themselves from that? And if they can, how?
Yeah. I don't think we ever can fully. I think it's a journey. It's a kind of a path that we're all on, which is why we should all do our work. Right. One of the things that we really challenge people to do in this book is to become students of human behavior, starting with ourselves, to understand ourselves. But it's just true that we all want to be loved and respected, right? That's really what it comes down to.
What's your self-narrative sound like?
Boy,
and
that's a great one.
What I mean is, what's the story you tell yourself about yourself?
Yeah. So it's so funny, my daughter, Bridget, 19-year-old, She introduced me to a song by Spoon. I don't know if you know Spoon, called Underdog.
Don't know.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, neither did I, right? This is why we have 19-year-olds to show us the way. And this song is all about, kind of going to be an underdog, kind of going to have to fight the forces around us. It's funny, just last week I heard the song and I've been listening to it on my travels, and I think that's a bit of my narrative. And I think that's really served me because, when you start a business, you got ups and downs. Sure. And so I feel like I've got some strength around that. So my narrative, I think, is about the underdog and just to keep fighting. And I think now that not that I'm so old, but I'm to an age now where I realize everyone's struggling with this, right? Everyone is. Everyone in the room here, anyone watching.
And what's this?
We're struggling
resilience?
with kind of wondering, are we good enough? Wondering, can we be successful? When we're public speaking or whatever the case, pitching, doing whatever, being in a job interview. What I realize now is, and this is what we teach athletes, is can you have that narrative there and just welcome it, befriend it as opposed to fight it? And I think so for me to come back, I think I'm just comfortable with the narrative, and I know I can just kind of stay with it, be uncomfortable, and be okay with it.
Your narrative sounds pretty empowering from my perspective. I don't know if that's how it plays in your head, but the notion of the underdog needing tenacity, which is something we will very much talk about in terms of your coat of armor.
Sure.
All right, I want to talk about some of those tools, but first I think it would really help everybody if you walk them through sort of the nature of pressure, what it does to us, whether or not we perform better under pressure. That'll help. Sure,
Tom. So first of all, 3 characteristics of pressure. I'll just remind people: it's when the outcome's important, when it's uncertain, and when we're responsible for being judged on the outcome. So when those 3 kind of parts are in place, that turns on a chemical cascade in the brain that makes us think, I'm under threat. When we feel under threat, really at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is pass on our designer genes to the next generation.
Right.
That's really what's going on also, on top of wanting to be loved and respected. And so I think we're always trying to protect ourselves, and this comes from millennia of, survive. Okay. So what happens for a lot of people is that we get really tunnel vision focused on what's most important in front of us to survive. And that was great 5,000 years ago, but today, now we need to kind of take in more points of view. We need to be able to listen as a leader. And there's a number of things we need to do. And what happens is that pressure diminishes all the key faculties that we have that we need to be successful in a pressure moment. And so one of the things that I ask audiences when I speak is, how many people think, and I want everyone here to think about this, how many people think that there are some people who do better under pressure? Think about athletes. Let's use athletes. That some athletes rise to the occasion and statistically do better in those moments than when there's not pressure, right? And if I ask a show of hands, most people here would say, yeah, probably that's true. And it's absolutely not true. It's just not true. The best example, Michael Jordan, right? He's the guy, maybe Steph Curry now, but he's the guy who historically you want the ball in his hands at the end of the game.
Right.
And the truth is that Michael Jordan shoots worse under pressure. We got great stats on this in the book. In those situations than his regular season average or his playoff average. Consistent with every other NBA basketball in the history of the game.
Right.
So, he gets diminished. Now, here's the thing. He's diminished less than other players, and that's why he's successful. He's not better than he's ever been before. And this is why it's really important to notice. If their narrative is, I'm going into an elevated competition, an Olympics, a Super Bowl, a job interview, a big pitch to a client, whatever the case. Wow, this is on a higher level I've ever been. Boy, I'm going to have to be better than I've ever been before. It makes sense.
Right.
So we walk in, we say, I'm going to need to be perfect to be successful. Now, here's the thing. Pressure diminishes us. It caused us to make mistakes. So now, I go in with the story, I need to be perfect to be successful. Oh, I was just imperfect, now I can't be successful. And we get this shame and embarrassment kind of doom loop down. So to come back, for people to know going into a pressure moment, you will make mistakes. You will. And so expect it. So that's what we teach athletes. Like even today, I'll forget something. Who cares? Right? And so for people to walk in and know that is what we really try to teach, to take a less haphazard approach, more intentional approach to pressure. And that's what allows us to be kind of more of who we are in a pressure moment.
Yeah, I love the story about Michael Jordan. And I think that most people, I was certainly surprised when you go through it in the book about how, okay, who would you say is the number one Michael Jordan? Look at the stats. You would think that you would see him outperform. That's why everyone wants to give him the ball, when in reality, it's actually not true. He's underperforming as well. But that he has found a way to let it diminish him less.
That's it.
And thinking about that, and you tied it into tenacity, and that the people that really are the ones that end up being successful are the ones that have the tenacity to go, okay, I didn't perform as well as I could have. Here's what I need to change and adjust. And then you go on to tell the story of Phil Jackson.
Yeah.
Also the same, that as the stakes go higher, his performance actually goes down. But that when he walked into the locker room, what was the first thing he would say?
Phil Jackson, I mean, an incredible story. I mean, he would walk into the dressing room and he wouldn't sit there and say, you know, Michael, why did you do that? Or Scotty, why did you do that? Or Dennis, you know, change your hair color. You know, he went in and actually first owned his mistakes. And what that allowed, of course, everyone else in that room to do is the same thing. What that team was really able to do in their championship run in the 90s was be a highly aggressive learning organization. They learned faster than anyone else. And the Dennis Rodman story is a great one, right? He was a crazy man. But I don't know how much of a basketball fan you are, but do you recall the one great quality he did bring to that team?
Oh yes, hustle, rebound,
absolutely.
Just like a madman.
Yeah, statistically speaking, one of the best rebounders in NBA history. And so the thing is that they were able, even though he acted crazy, to kind of aggressively learn to keep his great rebounding skills part of the team, but not let it sabotage the team. Because, you know, we see this with a lot of managers and leaders. They got a highly productive, high performer, but they leave bodies in their wake. You know, the highest level leader can kind of still manage that situation, keep their great qualities, but not let them sabotage a team. And I think Phil Jackson, that whole team, highly aggressive organization of learning, and I think that made a big difference.
Those kind of examples to me are super powerful, because I think that what really ends up messing people up is that what you were talking about before is they think, and you can even abstract it from pressure situations where they just think they have to be good, right? They have a fixed mindset.
Absolutely.
It's a reflection on them, who
Totally.
they are, what they're
an indictment of who I am.
Yes.
Exactly.
So when they can see people that they really respect, that have just achieved at the highest level, and hear that the thing that made them successful was actually just their ability to want the ball sooner, right?
Yes.
That, hey, I've totally muffed up. Like,
Yes.
I have embarrassed myself
Exactly.
in front of people.
Exactly.
But give me the ball again.
Exactly. That's it. And you know, it's interesting. There's this term in psychology called terminal uniqueness. I love this term.
Never heard that. What's
Yeah.
that?
Well, it's where we terminally think we're the only one going through an experience, and we're not.
Right.
And if you know that, and it's not just you uniquely, then you're like, oh, okay, I can handle that.
Right.
By the way, here's the other one. You walk into a pressure moment, if you don't feel like you need to be perfect, that's freeing in and of itself.
Right. And lowers the pressure.
It lowers the pressure.
Right.
And I mean, it's ironic, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So going into the notion of reframing, so you've got Jordan wants the ball faster than anybody else. You've got the physical read of anxiety, which I know you have some really interesting strategies on how to deal with that. Walk people through, like, what are the sort of how-tos of getting to Jordan's mindset where you can want the ball back faster because you get the neurochemicals under control, you start telling yourself a different narrative. How can people do that?
Yeah, great question. So the first one is that, again, we really want to challenge everyone to become students of human behavior. And the start is to know, okay, when you're under pressure, how does it show up for you? What's your experience? And just kind of get clinical about it. Emotions, thoughts, physical sensations. So literally in those three categories, how does it show up? For me, it's when I get warm right here, right? For other people, it's butterflies. I never really experienced that, but other people do.
Must be nice.
Yeah, maybe, exactly, right? So for me, you know, when I feel pressure coming up, then I need a strategy. So the book, as I think you know, is based on a study of 12,000 people over 7 years, right? And we had 120,000 people rate these folks and try to understand what's going on, because they can rate them behaviorally, you know, how they show up. And what's interesting is when you go into a pressure moment, A, no one's going to be perfect, number one. But B, we were shocked at how many people took a haphazard approach to pressure. They didn't know there's an emerging science, which I get, but they didn't have tools. So they'd kind of get all serious about preparing themselves, understandably, on what they want to say, their ideas, the detail, but they don't prepare themselves. And physically. And here's the problem. When people are making a buying decision, like people are buying us right now, or they're not buying us, in any job interview, presentation, whatever, you're buying us right now, just so you know. I hope you're buying what we're saying. But the criteria that they and anyone use is really three. People buy people, ideas, then product. But we think it's the other way around. We go in thinking, I got to know all the features and benefits of the product and the ideas. No, they're buying us. So if we go in and we haven't prepared ourselves, but we over-prepare on stuff they don't care about as much, but we under-prepare on ourselves, then all of a sudden, when we have those three parts come up, emotions, thoughts, physical sensations, what happens is that we go, I don't want to feel that. So so pressure diminishes us in the moment, and it doesn't feel good in the moment. Right? So no wonder then we start to wrestle with it. And here's what happens. It's amazing. We start to wrestle. I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel it. And now we lose the focus on the task at hand.
Yes.
That's part of why we're diminished. So what we want to do now is help people see it differently. So as opposed to, oh my gosh, and I'm going to be judged, or this is a crisis or a threat, it's, oh, you're back. Oh, I guess my body's getting ready to perform.
Right.
Oh, and now then we practice. Mindfulness is a really big thing, but we help people be non-judgmental, non-reactive to this physical sensation they're experiencing. Oh, you're back, great. I guess my body's getting ready to perform. And by the way, then we, on the next level up, it's, wow, this is exciting. I'm going to live an adventure. Because the one thing you don't want to leave in Olympics, as I say to athletes, with regret. You don't. That's the worst. You can lose.
Right.
You can get close and lose, but you don't want to leave with regret thinking, I played small, I didn't go for it.
Right.
So instead, it's like, hey, I'm living an adventure. Let's go. Now let me get back to almost the kind of really important piece around the appraisal piece that you mentioned. Because many of us don't know that we have a default appraisal of how we see our pressure moments, many of us get into this crisis. Oh, this is bad because I feel judged. This is a threat. I've got to do things that doesn't feel good. I'm diminished. Instead, we want to get away from kind of this crisis thinking to opportunity thinking, which is, hey, it's an opportunity to share all this stuff. Like today, right now, I'm like, I get an opportunity to share with a lot of people how they can be closer to their best. Bring it on. So that helps me be less affected by, being on camera or whatever.
Right.
For a job interview, same thing. You've prepared. Get excited about how you're going to share what you have with that person, or with the presentation. You've done all this work. You're going to make a difference for these people. So that's an opportunity to share. What's amazing is that it has an impact on our physiology. So amazingly enough, when you get into crisis thinking, it changes our kind of neurochemistry. We get more noradrenaline, less adrenaline, and that causes vasoconstriction in our smooth muscles. So everyone here, when you work out, right, you work on your skeletal muscles. It's a voluntary activity. I'm going to work out. I'm going to choose to, do curls for the girls. I guess I shouldn't say that, or something for the guys, right? But you're choosing to voluntarily move your skeletal muscle. But we have smooth muscle that's lining our blood vessels. Right. So independent, and it's involuntary. So right now for you and I, we have this great muscle pumping through the smooth muscle in our blood vessels, oxygenated blood to our body and brain. It's a beautiful thing. You don't have to attend to it. It just does it on its own. What's amazing though is that when we get into crisis thinking, more noradrenaline than adrenaline, vasoconstriction in the blood vessels, blood pools in our blood vessels. It doesn't get to our body, it doesn't get to our brain. We can't think as clearly, we get more fatigued. If you see it more as an opportunity, you get vasodilation in those same smooth muscles. Oxygenated blood gets to our brain, our body, we have more energy, we can think more clearly, and now we perform better. So this is the whole idea around cognitive appraisal, and really to ask yourself, how am I seeing this moment? As a crisis or as an opportunity?
Yeah, cognitive appraisal is really, really useful. And going back to what you're saying about how people can deal with the physiology of anxiety, of pressure, of all of that, of essentially using either the sweaty forehead, or in my case, it is the butterflies in the stomach, which can be just incredibly distracting.
Totally.
But using that as a trigger to either trigger your self-narrative to say, this is an adventure, right? This is not a danger. There's no lion or anything that's going to jump out of the bush at me.
Exactly.
This is an opportunity for growth. It's an opportunity to learn. But if you fight that feeling instead of using it as a trigger for a more positive loop, then you get yourself into that internal wrestling. But it's interesting because I've actually used internal wrestling as well, and I'd love to hear sort of your insights on, like, one of the things I do in meditation is actively try to lower my heart rate, to slow my breathing, to lower my heart rate. I do it with headphones on so I can actually hear the beating of my heart, which is weird. I don't know why.
No, sure you can.
So because I can hear the beating of my heart, I have the biofeedback to know if it's working. Now I'm not saying to myself, hey, this is, an adventure to try to use that energy. I'm actively trying to crush it down. Do you think that's a horrible strategy?
No, not at all. 26 years ago, I went and spent time in a monastery in Asia. But here's what's interesting. Like, mindfulness and meditation as research and practice has kind of evolved, at least in a Western way of thinking. It's been there for 2,500 years. But so the idea of what you're talking about, the physiological benefits, the biofeedback, it's a great thing because it restores. And if you can sit there and practice cultivating this non-judgmental, non-reactive kind of awareness, there is an itch, I'm just going to watch it as opposed to habitually react to it. What you're cultivating is that non-reactive, non-judgmental kind of awareness that helps us now when we're cut off in traffic. Because what we know from Sarah Lazar's work at Harvard, when you practice mindfulness, your left prefrontal cortex, there's a couple places, but essentially your prefrontal cortex literally grows, like physically grows, which calms the amygdala, the emotional part of our brain. In fact, the amygdala even shrinks, amazingly enough. This is incredible stuff. So what happens now is that our day-to-day where we're, either in a performance moment or not, we're less reactive. And then it takes less out of us during the day. So there's a physiological from the meditation, great. And I meditate every day or try to, and that's great. And then it's like if you could also use it as a way to kind of change how your reaction is to your experience, then you get almost a double hit. And that's actually what's interesting is that's what allows us to show up. And as we feel that, again, all the way back to the student of human behavior, that physical sensation for you here, for me here, we're like, you're back, and be non-reactive, non-judgmental in a very authentic way. And now you show up and I show up differently. So I want to show up here and just be my best self, and hopefully you too, and that's what can grab people.
Can we hashtag real talk about meditation for a second?
Oh, well, I could talk all day about meditation.
All right, so for me, a big part of what makes meditation work is the physiology of the style of breath I use.
Okay.
And if you're paying really close attention, you'll see I've done it like 4 times in this interview. But it gets real awkward to do multiple times because people notice. And then that makes you self-conscious of, I'm using this breathing technique to, either quiet my amygdala or just, for me, in an interview like this where I've done enough prep work ahead of time to already come in calm. It's just sort of another reset to make sure that I stay there. But as things get heightened, like if something's going awry, it's all happening sort of there in real time, to say, excuse me for a sec. Right? Like people are gonna be like, what are you doing? And so then you'd be even more self-conscious, which then you
of course.
Right? The heart really starts racing. Like, what kind of buffoon do I look like right now?
And by the way, just notice that's that third category of pressure, right? Being judged.
For sure.
Right? So that's the thing that turns that on, but keep going.
So what can you do in real time where it's happening in a way, like let's say you're about to stand up and give the biggest talk of your life, right? The moment you walk out, there's no going back.
Right.
So if your heart is racing at that moment, like, what then? What do you do in that moment? Either you or what you help somebody do where it is go time right now. There's no more time to sort of back up, slow down. Like you've got to meet it at speed, but physiologically you're not centered.
So you literally need to have different tools for emotions than for thinking so that you can deliver. The truth is, though, is that you can do all this stuff. I mean, it's really almost going to come back to what we talked about earlier. You can do all this stuff and still feel, that heart pounding, the butterflies, whatever it is. And I guess probably maybe what I would say to everyone is, the truth is that people can't read your mind. So we worry that they know I'm sweating or I'm anxious. They know it. Well, they actually can't. And so, if, in a sense, what you want to do is think, just hang in there. The other thing, by the way, in terms of the breathing though, I probably wouldn't breathe. We all have to breathe. But in that moment,
breathe a little.
Just breathe a little. But instead I'd do a body scan. So right now, what I would do if I were you is, as opposed to kind of physically breathe, and like you say, that feels a bit funny in the moment, awkward. I would just sit there and right now feel my body. So feel, as you're sitting, what's touching the chair, what's touching the air, and use your body as an anchor. So, one of the things we talk about with athletes is to use different anchors. So there's kind of a performance anchor, an appreciation anchor, and one is a body anchor. To just, okay, I'm feeling my body. I'm really getting kind of grounded in my body as opposed to racing in my mind. So that's another technique we use.
How can you practice this stuff? Like you do such a good job of defining pressure, creating a real pressure situation versus one that's just stressful, right?
Right.
In one of your articles, I think you said arguing with your wife about what the kids should have for breakfast is stressful.
Yes.
But being in a life or death situation, that's pressure.
Right.
So how can you practice pressure situations when it is so hard to, because I like to think of as practice as where you can mess up, make mistakes, sort of stop, reassess, do it over and over and over.
Yeah.
It's hard to create that and have real stakes.
One of the challenges around pressure is that we can get avoidant. So when we feel it's a crisis, a threat, we can start to avoid. I'll give you an example. In our research around the conversations under pressure, emotions under pressure, thinking under pressure, conversations, think about a performance review you're having with someone or any kind of feedback conversation. What we notice is that many managers, leaders, they get to kind of 85, 90, 92% of what I want to say in that moment. Then when we get to the last 8%, the more difficult part, the part where now there's consequences attached to what I'm saying to you, this is when emotions get more extreme. You now realize, oh, there could be consequence for my career, my job, my whatever. And in that moment, because we know that emotions are infectious, great study at Harvard Medical Business School, joint study, they put 3 people into a room, the person emotionally excitable, whether negatively or positively, infected the other 2 people within 30 seconds, whether they said a word or not. So here's what's going on. I'm having the conversation, I'm getting to the last 8%, you're now getting agitated, I'm getting infected by your emotion. This is the dynamic that's going on. And in that moment, what I do, because it feels like so much is on the line and I have to work with you tomorrow.
Right.
And because I have a quake inside, an identity quake, I see myself as nice, I'm doing something that's not nice. This is all going on layers.
Yeah.
I avoid that last 8% conversation. I never have it. And here's the problem. We leave, you think, we had the performance review, things seem pretty good, because you can't read my mind.
Right.
You don't know we didn't have the last 8%. I leave that conversation deluding myself, thinking we talked about most of the stuff I wanted to talk about, but we didn't. 2 months later, you're still doing the same thing. I'm looking at you going, what are you doing? You're looking at me going, why are you being passive aggressive? I thought things are good between us. And the problem is that we never had the last 8% conversation.
Right.
We get into that avoidant behavior. George Bernard Shaw said the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. It never took place. What we want to do is approach as much as we can our pressure moments. Because here's the irony. The irony is pressure diminishes us, pressure doesn't feel good. We avoid. Then we don't get an opportunity to practice, because what's true is that while in the moment it diminishes us, it doesn't feel good, when you take a long view, pressure actually helps us get better, right? It's that kind of adaptive energy, and we call it an adaptive opportunity. And I'll give you a few examples, and you maybe read them in the book. There's this anchor woman from Baltimore, she got fired from her first job, Oprah Winfrey, right? In the moment it felt like horrible. But if you can take the long view, that was just an opportunity for her to grow some skills, which is exactly what it did. She's successful. Steven Spielberg, 5 times California Film School, didn't get accepted. So in the moment, for him, it felt like, oh my God, end of the world, all or nothing. But he grew himself. It was an adaptive opportunity. On the 6th time he got in, and he ended up doing really well because he had done work and that helped him. So for all of us, take the long view. It can feel horrible in the moment, but if you can sit there and say, how can I use this opportunity to grow skills I'll need in 5 years? All of a sudden, it's like there's real meaning to wanting pressure moments. So there's nothing I love better than seeing either young people or, any of us kind of become more and have a little more confidence to walk into a pressure moment and say, hey, let's go. And that's a beautiful thing.
That's so well said. I have a phrase that I use to essentially remind me of exactly what you just said, which is all of life is but disciplined practice. And the reason that I say that is because all of us, and certainly myself included, the temptation is to judge yourself based on where you are today. Like you take a snapshot and say, this is who I am.
Right.
And when you do that, it's terrifying because you think, whoa, I failed at this and therefore I am a failure, rather than saying, okay, there's something that I can learn here, I can improve, I can get better.
Yeah.
It was all just practice towards, some future version of myself. Yeah. So at the worst of times and at the best of times, quite frankly, I'm just saying that to myself over and over. All of life is but disciplined practice, right?
I like that. That's great.
To remind myself to go headlong into that pressure moment, because you basically said what I feared is true, which is you can't safely recreate pressure, right?
Yeah.
So now you're just going to have to take advantage of the pressure situations that present themselves. I'm thinking about creating a shirt if anybody wants one. I forget what the initials are off the top of my head, but it's outside your comfort zone, OYCZ, because I feel that I live 90% of my life just this side of a state of panic. And the reason that I do that is because I have found that's the only place I'm able to get better, right?
Yeah.
So now the things that panic me recede farther and farther and farther, and other people see oh my God, running a company or having a show like this or getting up and giving a speech, things where they would rather be dead than do, which would have been true for me before I started the same journey of, well, okay, I walk up, take 2 steps back from panic, live there for a while, and then all of a sudden, oh, this isn't panic anymore.
Yeah.
You go right up to 2 steps from panic, back up.
That's great.
You know what I mean? And so it keeps pushing it out, but I have lived my entire life. I'm almost never comfortable. And going to the point of saying, if I feel uncomfortable, that's the thing I'm going to do. And that's so famous. You hear people say it all the time. But I think people intrinsically are that sounds so horrid. I would not want to live my life like that.
Yeah.
But if your goal is to imagine yourself in the ocean, if your goal is to only go where you can touch, do you really want your life limited like that? Or would you rather become a better swimmer, right? And that's the life choice I think people have to make. Do you want to stay where you can touch, or do you want to focus on becoming a better swimmer?
Yeah.
And so putting yourself in that situation where you're forced to be a better swimmer, where you do the last 8%, where you say to yourself, this is practice, where you take those opportunities to really be tenacious, which brings us to your amazing coat, C-O-T-E, of armor, which impacted me so much. I want to see if I can remember them all.
Great.
Confidence, optimism, tenacity, and don't you dare, because I know what this is, and enthusiasm.
You got it.
Right? That's so powerful. Will you explain that to me?
Sure. So the book is set up. The first part 1 is really the science of pressure. The second part is in the moment solutions. Part 3 is the kind of longer lasting kind of qualities that take longer to build, but then become that coat, that kind of coat of armor that protects you, inoculates you against pressure, so that you walk in and you're just a little more confident, optimistic, tenacious, and enthusiastic. And so in the book, there's real specifics on what is each quality and then how to build each quality. And I think, probably, if we just start with confidence, it's the first one. We just finished a white paper on women and pressure. And women, gosh, we could talk a long time just on this. But what's interesting is that women have some really kind of brain-based differences that actually help them see more context when they're under pressure than men. Which is why smart organizations should be elevating women, because the research is clear that when organizations have more voice from women, or at least more balanced voice, They do better in profit, equity, return on investment, return on capital. It's all there, the research, it's great. Okay. But what's ironic is that women tend to be a little less confident than men. They go into a pressure moment, and it's almost like they have to have more kind of reason, more data to say, yes, I can apply for this job. Men, if they have 2 of the 7 qualities, they're going to apply. Women need 6 out of the 7 qualities to apply for the same job.
Interesting.
And that's crazy, right? It's like, it's not crazy. It's just, I think this is one thing that I'm really hoping this white paper will do is, for instance, help women recognize, okay, I'm going to build confidence. I'm going to protect my confidence. So, and there's a number of different ways. Confidence is a neurochemical phenomena of testosterone and cortisol. Really. So testosterone we think of as that kind of, it's really misunderstood. It's not just a male hormone. Men and women both have it, number one. Number two, testosterone is not an aggression drug, which we think. It's not at all. It's actually more of a justice drug. When we feel there's an injustice, it's actually what helps us move into a pressure moment and take risk. Yeah, absolutely. And so we want to, in a sense, have more testosterone.
That answers so succinctly why anger can be so intoxicating.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certainty in your life,
That's
a
right.
sense of injustice that you're going to correct. Great insight.
Yeah.
Man. Thank you.
So no worries. And then, so there's testosterone, there's cortisol is a stress hormone. When we have more cortisol, we infect others with our anxiety. Like in that last 8% conversation, that's why emotions are infectious. So in a sense, it's all about the ratio. We want leaders who have higher testosterone, they're decisive, they'll take action, and lower cortisol, they're a non-anxious presence. That's what we all want. Right. And what's amazing is that we can influence that, and we just don't even know it, and we don't even do it, which is incredible. Amy Cuddy did this work, and a bunch of others, Susan Fisk at Princeton, Amy at Harvard, where they looked at not only does our mind affect our body, but our body affects our mind. Just how we're sitting. Now, how you're sitting right now is influencing your brain chemistry, right? So if we are more open and expansive, our brain says, oh, you must be more confident. Pump up the testosterone, pump down the cortisol. If you're closed and contracted, we have the opposite effect. Increase the cortisol, decrease the testosterone. So this is one of the things we teach an athlete is to stand in an open and expansive, and for 90 seconds you do that, you increase testosterone by 25%, decrease cortisol by 22 to 25%. Incredible. For 90 seconds. Why wouldn't we do that? Yeah. Let me give you another one. This is a great one. So before you go into a job interview, let's say, they brought these pimply face undergrads into the Harvard laboratories, and pimply face undergrads will do anything for $20, right? So they come in and they're said, okay, they're told to wait until the experiment begins. And so, the researcher goes away and they sit there and wait. And they're given, as they wait, either an iMac Pro laptop, an iPad, or an iPhone, okay? And then what they're trying to see is who gets up first to go walk over to the researcher and say, hey, you forgot me, which is kind of a bit uncomfortable because of the power dynamic. You're actually kind of, like that's uncomfortable. You have to be decisive, right? Okay. So who do you think got up first of the 3 groups?
God, I'm gonna guess and just say the computer.
Because?
It forces you to take a more expansive posture.
Awesome. You are awesome. No. Awesome. Marginally, think about it, we're just slightly more open and expansive. A little bit more testosterone, a little less cortisol. We're more decisive. They got up first. The iPad people took twice as long, statistically significant. The iPhone people never got up at all.
They're still there.
They're still there, yeah. They had to stop the study. It's called the floor effect, where they kind of said, go on, get out of here, you failed,
Wow.
And so just let's think about this, right, before you go into a job interview where you want to be your confident self. Again, let's go to male, female. It's on my brain because of the white paper we just published. Women tend to try to make themselves small. Don't do that. Take your space, right? Because not only are people reading you, so you're gonna have more influence on people, but you are reading you. you're going to have more testosterone, less cortisol. So you'll actually step up and say, no, I disagree. Or you'll make your point as opposed to kind of not get up and knock on the door and say, hey, you forgot me. Because here's the most amazing part. The brain doesn't know what's the difference between what's real or what's perceived. Right. So we do this, we do, me at my best, and we walk in, and we're not perfect, but we're closer to, hey, I'm calm, I'm ready to connect, let's go.
That is amazing. I'm so sad that we have to get you to a flight. You are like a walking how-to manual of how to live a better life. It's absolutely insane. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Guys, you're going to want to dive into this, man. It was incredible. They say when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. I was ready for this man's message. Absolutely incredible. Really, really walks you through, what you saw today is the tip of the iceberg, but what I want you to frame what you heard today is that he's walking you through the how-tos of being able to perform under pressure. It's not theoretical. It's not off in the ether somewhere. It's real, actionable evidence as you dig into the notion of the coat of armor and understand the ways that you actually can build your confidence, how you can use optimism, how tenacity may be the most important thing that you could possibly be focused on, and how all the people that achieve just unprecedented levels of success share tenacity. It's absolutely amazing. And then enthusiasm helps with anything that you're going to do in your life, but you're going to want to dig in. It's absolutely incredible stuff. It's really impacted me, man. It's awesome. You came prepared. That was incredible. All of your open and expansive stuff. I really believe in it. I really think it works. I use it. It's absolutely fantastic. I hope you guys have enjoyed this as much as I have. Where can they find you? Yeah, so pressurebook.com is one place. And you can learn all about our assessment training coaching. Also, our company is the Institute for Health and Human Potential, IHHP.com. It goes to the same place. So that's where you can read anything you want about what we're doing. Awesome. And to the person who asked me on Twitter what I should ask him, it sounds like that will be the perfect answer. They wanted to know how you can help others in crisis. So there you go. It sounds like all of your answers will be there. And thank you to everybody who sent in their questions. I tried to include them seamlessly into the interview here, which was incredible. You can find us at insidequest.com. You can find me at Tom Bilyeu. We're super active socially. This community has turned into something that has far exceeded my wildest expectations and imagination. So keep everything coming. And if you want to be a guest in this lovely audience, then by all means, it's an honor to have you. So hit us up on insidequest.com, click the tickets link. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care. Thank you so much.